Welcome to the Why and How of Energy Leadership Workshops and Webinars. I'm your host, Vic Ballara, and I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to attend this informational program. So what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to be looking at why these programs are important. Why should you do webinars and workshops? How you can do this, so specific techniques, selling tools, and approaches for you to close these kinds of deals. How to communicate the message once you've promoted and advertised your workshop and webinar. And more importantly, the bottom line, specific agendas and the ROI of coaching. So let's jump into it. So if we look at why these programs are important, all of the research is pointing to the importance of energy leadership. So here's the Hay Group that talks about the leadership competencies in the 2030 time frame. So 15 years from now, in fact, I would say that these are actually quite critical today, is emotional intelligence, as we have heard Daniel Goleman talk about, and how those behaviors spell out, and the behaviors that leaders need, and all of the words are describing anabolic leadership. I think you might agree with me. If you look at another study, we find that CEOs feel they are unprepared to meet the human capital demands of the next decade, and it's really the #1 issue that keeps them up at night. When another survey of 15,000 individuals looked at the quality of leadership, they gave that a failing grade, and it's been failing for 5 years. What's really more important is human resources, who typically owns leadership development, have graded themselves even worse. So when they rated the quality of their leaders, it's down around the 25% range. So that means there's huge potential for us to offer programs, webinars, and workshops in order to lead into executive coaching assessments. Now here's, I would say the source is GoToWebinar, which we're using today, but their research says that business people attend at least one webinar per week. And the #1 element that keeps them engaged is interesting and relevant content. And of course, you have to be passionate and energetic. You have to interact with your audience, and you have to have slides and visual elements that are engaging. And so I think by the time we're done today, you'll see how all this plays out. Now here's another study that was completed last year, and when you look at what drives organizations' succession pipeline, that is their leaders who are ready to be promoted, leadership development and coaching were the top 2 strategies, and that's what energy leadership is all about. So the research is really reinforcing how important what we do is to organizational success. So now what keeps us as coaches from doing these kinds of programs? Well, I have to say, I'm in this group too. It's sometimes afraid, to pick up the phone, to put yourself out there, to sell your programs. You're afraid of what happens when they say yes. So it's like, okay, what now? What am I going to do now that they've said yes? Afraid your client won't get the results promised. So again, it's our gremlins showing up. Of course, limiting beliefs in terms of, well, clients just don't seem to be interested in this, therefore why bother? And I think the biggest issue that was holding me back personally was that I just didn't have the materials to present. So why do workshops? Well, here's one reason, and I attribute Michael Port to this comment: always have something to offer. Michael Port wrote the Book Yourself Solid book. So, you have coaching clients, no matter how well you can promote the value. say that, well, we really don't have the budget for that. Well, let me show you what a webinar might do. We can do the ELI, a debrief, and a 90-minute webinar. And look at this. Between you and I, your hourly rate just went up significantly. So if that didn't work out, so our individual price went from $3,500 to just $400. Now we could do a more more interaction, more touching the actual client in terms of a workshop, whether you call it a workshop or group coaching. In this case, it's a little bit more expensive for the client, but less expensive than coaching. And drum roll, here's my little drum roll. Guess what? Your hourly rate almost doubled over individual coaching. You're reaching more people with similar amounts of information, certainly not the kind of value that coaching provides. And then there's the workshop. So if you did a half-day workshop, you now have something that you can offer clients. It's somewhere in the middle. It's $1,000 a person. It's a half-day workshop with the ELI and debrief. And you know what? The bottom line is your rate just went up to $639 an hour. Now, we're going to come back to this. That all depends on how much time you dedicate to preparing the content to deliver a workshop. But I'll come back to that in a minute. Now, you can do this. I mean, here's an example of a program. It's a 3-day program. It's $2,500 for non-members. And here's another one. That was 4 days, $9,400. And when you look at this, we're talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of $140 to $300 per person per contact hour. So that's why this is so important. Now, if we look at another example, here's an example that I did with a partner actually, with the Chamber of Commerce, where we did a free workshop to generate leads. And this turned out to be very productive. We got the word out, we divided up the clients that came to this, and it turned out to be profitable for both of us. Now again, why do webinars? Well, here's an example. $300 for a 75-minute program. If you were to get 20 people to sign up, that's $6,000, right? Not a bad return on your investment. Now here's another one, and LinkedIn is always a popular one, but this is $297 for a 60-minute session. So very, very productive. Now, this is one I liked, which I thought was really interesting. Here is a $200 60-minute session that addresses all of the contacts, all of the content, I should say, that we offer or could offer in an energy leadership workshop. So you can do this. I mean, here's another one, $249 for a 1-hour session. And in this, this prompted me to think that, gee, you could do a series of webinars on every one of the ELDS modules. One more example, here's a white paper only that was $99. So the market is there. Companies and individuals are used to paying for individual development. In fact, it's probably more popular than internal programs. So companies are authorizing individuals to go ahead and purchase these kinds of programs. So if you're going to do a webinar, you've got to look at some sort of a platform. No matter what I use or test out, I always seem to come back to GoToWebinar. Now I will, and most of these have free trials, but I will say that I found that GoToWebinar, if you use it for a while and then stop, they'll come back to you with a special offer. I can't guarantee they'll do it all the time, but now I'm doing the program for 100 people, and it's $69. So they reduce the cost considerably. I think they're really feeling the pinch for it. I won't go through all of these, but I will talk about a couple in particular. Now, I know you're familiar with Instant Teleseminar, very popular among coaches. For me, I think there's a lot of wasted real estate on the far left. And so I just have some problems with that. Now, Google Hangouts and Easy Webinar is becoming very popular. In fact, you can now get this for $400 for the year and have unlimited webinars and unlimited people. So I've tried this. I tried it, I think, a little bit too soon. There was a lot of technical glitches. I've experienced this with other organizations, and I've seen them have technical problems. And the bottom line, it doesn't work with Internet Explorer. Plus, there's this wasted space on the far right as well. So how do you close webinar sales, or how do you get started in this? You've got to have a compelling objective, compelling content, value that you provide, confident that your irresistible offer is truly something that's of value, and you use the webinar. In fact, if it's a 60-minute webinar as a teaser, you can give it away for free or charge for it. But if you use it as a teaser for your deep dive course, it can really create the right buzz. Now, when you look at workshops, of course, an in-person workshop used to be the norm, but it has become so expensive to deliver. You can't offer it for free. They're expensive for the participant to attend. They have to drive. A 90-minute session becomes 2 to 3 hours. Here in Southern California, no one likes to commute. Refreshments are expensive, so your costs go up, and you can't record and then repurpose the content. So webinars really become the more value, more bang for your buck, for you and for them. No driving time. You can use it for free. You can test it. You can reach a larger audience. I mean, you could get 100, 200 people to sign up, but in person, if it were 25 people, that would be great. So it's getting more and more expensive to fill a room in a workshop than it is in a webinar. Webinars are much less expensive to promote, and it results in a much larger ROI for you. So how do we go about filling our workshop or webinar seat? It's all about the buzz you create. Write an article, become a guest on the many radio talk shows that are out there. Create a newsletter or an ebook. Again, you create opportunities for clients to experience you in a no-risk situation. So your articles, your LinkedIn comments, blogs, your radio shows, the ebook, there's nothing at risk here, and they can experience you, and it's obviously important you put valuable content out there. But it's a way for them to experience you before they join you on a workshop or a webinar. Of course, LinkedIn comments and discussions on LinkedIn groups, producing valuable blogs that provide information. As I mentioned before, you could have a teaser webinar. But you can turn all that information into robust information products that you can offer for free or charge. And the other is to think of joint ventures. Now, what's a joint venture? Well, by definition, it's a mutually beneficial relationship. So think about an organization that's in front of your ideal clients who don't offer a competitive product. For us, from an executive development standpoint, the big opportunity is with strategic consulting firms, because what they know is that strategy fails when leaders can't execute, and leaders who are catabolic leaders can't execute. So this is where everyone wins. We help them provide their clients with valuable skills in order for their strategy consulting to be more effective. And one example that I have is how I partnered with an organization called NextWorks that offered corporate and executive programs. And this is a standing room only classroom where we charge $65 for a paid marketing event. So we filled the room, we provided content. I partnered with 2 high-level chief HR officers from prestigious companies, and we were able to get the word out, and then offered the Energy Leadership Assessment at a discounted price if they wanted to sign up, and it led to $200,000 in immediate proposals and projects. Now, the key to strategic joint ventures is to get your agreement in writing beforehand, but that's a whole nother topic. So now that you've decided you want to do a webinar or a workshop, you need content. So 6 years ago, I started down this path. I had gotten a client who said, yes, we'd like you to come in and do a half-day workshop. I said, great, now what do I do? So I started looking for content. And here's a slide deck that I found. I think this was like $3.95 for 50 slides, pretty generic and really not compelling. Of course, on the Energy Leadership website, you have the IPEC workshop with a script. That the script is good, but the content is pretty boring. I mean, in fact, this was researched from 2006, and this presentation is still on the website, so this was no help. I love IPEC. I think Energy Leadership is transformative. It's part of my coaching programs. They just don't know how to communicate the message clearly and compelling manner. So compare this data or this presentation to this presentation. I feel like the optometrist. Do you like number 1 or do you like number 2? So the research is the same. It's just how you present it. So here's a sample agenda. This is an overview of a 4-day workshop. Now, in this case, these are typically in-house workshops. I'm not doing public workshops where multiple companies pay to attend. This is a client who says, yes, I want you to come on site to deliver a half-day workshop to 28 leaders. So what I've created is not only the content, but a roadmap, slide by slide, with 7 interactive exercises and all of the pacing and timing that goes along with it. Depending on the time, I can include videos. I think videos are really a great break. They want to know that you're aligned with people like Daniel Goleman, that you know what's out there relative to research. So I have an excerpt from the 50-minute session with Anderson Cooper on mindfulness. But you can't really do the videos if you're only doing 4 hours and you want to get through a lot of content. So this is really the optional piece for a full-day workshop. And then I have an additional schedule that takes us and rounds out the full-day agenda. And as I mentioned, there are 7 interactive exercises, including a strategic initiative that allows the group to look at their E-factor scores, which typically show up as 70% energy working against them. And then we strategize around how they're going to work together to shift into more of an anabolic mode. You know, how do you explain energy leadership? You know, how do you explain catabolic and anabolic energy? So I've developed the script, the graphics, and the information to put it into terms that leaders will understand. Sometimes I'll use this example, walking around with the bomb disposal gear. It protects you, but it means you need to work harder just to produce the same results. Another example is pulling rocks behind you. And this is a great example because energy leadership assessment will tell you how big those rocks are, And then the Core Energy Coaching Program teaches you how to chip away at those rocks. And then, of course, what's holding us back in terms of ego, judging, self and others, doubts, worries, gremlins, gales. I have a great exercise for the gales. So engagement is a topic that everybody is interested in. Companies are spending billions of dollars every year. And then when you look at Gallup's data, well, why is there no return on that investment? Why aren't employees more engaged if companies spend $1 billion on employee engagement programs and there's no results? Well, we know as IPEC certified coaches that it's because the leaders are not engaged. And guess what? Well, I'll come back to that in a second. So compare these results to the results that Gallup has seen. We know that as a leader's energy increases, their level of engagement also increases. And what's funny about the Gallup data is they're just now coming around and saying that this lack of employee engagement, that leaders account for 70% of that. And we've known that for 20 years, 15 years, that with an E-factor score average of in the low 3s, leaders aren't engaged. So how do you price your programs? Well, you need to do your research, you need to offer value, and you need to really focus on the results and the cost of nothing, of doing nothing. That's status quo. And I'm a big fan of reducing scope, not reducing fees. So if they can't afford a full-day workshop, we cut back to a half-day workshop. And then it's important to get a feel for what have they paid in the past and what value have they received. So, you've probably seen me talk a lot about the ROI of coaching. This is how I sell coaching, how I sell workshops, and that it's really all about return on investment. So here's an example. So here's a company that said 35% of their employees are currently operating below expectations, which is about standard. Overall productivity is low. We know that universally because the gross domestic product increases in the U.S. at a level of about 1%, which is terrible. And if the companies really are on top of things, they know that top performers are beginning to leave. Now, here's the key. You need to determine what that impact is. And in this example, this was costing them about $3 million, or to put it in a different way, about $600,000, I think, per month, if that's right. No, I'm not quick on my math here. So that's about $300,000 every month is going down the tubes. And that's an important number to emphasize, because status quo is the enemy of progress. So if they don't understand that if they do nothing, it's going to cost them over $300,000 a month. So we identified 80 leaders to go through the program, 6 months of coaching plus a full-day workshop, and we anticipated productivity to go up 20%. And it turns out that the ROI, return on investment, was 9.7 to 1. And this is how we figured it. Now, imagine this. If I were to tell someone, well, what is this going to cost, Vic? And I said, well, it's going to be about $357,000. They would show me the door. But you can't talk about the investment until you talk about the solution and value. And here's what we found, is that $22 million every year was being lost because of performance issues. Their turnover was costing $10 million. And the overall, in this particular example, the overall loss for this particular client was $637,000 every week. And if we were able to increase productivity just 20%, that would mean a $2 million gain and a 9.7 to 1 ROI. That means for every dollar they invested, they got almost $10 back. They can't find that anywhere else. So the important element here is to emphasize how much money is going down the drain if they do nothing. Now, what I've done is I've created this interactive Excel spreadsheet that helps you price projects and calculate ROI immediately. And in this case, in this example, the ROI was 5 to 1 if we implemented coaching for every single leader, 2 ELIs, and the workshops themselves. So this is something you can utilize on the fly to say, well, it looks like about a 5 to 1 return on your investment. Now here's another client where we actually used the ELI and we found that engagement went up 60%. The personal freedom went up 50%. We found that spiritual connection, mindfulness, being more present, up 67%. And productivity went up 43%. So imagine what that would be worth to one of your clients. And what I do is I coach for 6 months and do 2 ELIs in order to come up with this kind of information. So the question for you, do you want more clients, more revenue, and more profit? What I've created, having spent more than 70 hours on workshop program material, every time I've done another workshop, it gets better and better. You've seen some examples of the materials, the graphics, professionally done. I've invested over $400 in the graphics alone. So typically, American Society for Training and Development says it takes about 8 hours to develop a 1-hour program. So if you were to develop an 8-hour all-day workshop from scratch, that would be 64 hours. Well, I've invested over 70 myself, so you don't have to. So what's 60 hours worth to you? If you're, I'm sure you're charging more than $100 an hour, that's $6,000 for you to create this. So don't bother, I've done it for you. I have the template for the ROI calculation, the interactive ROI spreadsheet. I have a master class that's a deeper dive into ROI techniques. And my case studies and white papers are all brandable, customizable for you so that they become yours. And 30-minute one-on-one coaching sessions. Now, since I focused on ROI, the ROI is about 20 to 1. It's actually more than that, but let's just be safe. And if you go to this website, you can purchase the program for, another drum roll, 75% off. So it's a limited time offer. I'm happy to walk you through some sample materials, so just give me a holler. The real bottom line is this is real level 6 energy where everyone always wins. So I want to thank you. And since we're really out of time, I will encourage you to email me your questions or give me a call. This is my information. Again, I'm Vic Valera. I thank you for this time and look forward to speaking to you in the future. Thanks again. Take care.